Hi everybody, my name is Jens Larsen. Jim Hall is like the reluctant superhero of jazz guitar. And in this video I'm going to show you some of the ideas that he's using in his solo on Autumn Leaves of the duo album with Ron Carter called Alone Together. I think some of the stuff that he's using in here is really interesting in terms of changing the harmony while you're soloing, and also some fairly hip polyrhythms. And of course he has a really strong melodic concept that is really worthwhile analyzing and checking out. For me, it was always a lot more useful to figure out what the concept was behind what was being played in a solo, rather than just trying to play the same lick without really thinking about what's going on. Because if you know what the idea is, what the concept is, then you can incorporate it into your own playing in a much more free way and really make it a part of your sound without sounding like you just copied some licks of a solo. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, improve the way that you solo, check out some interesting arpeggios or chord voicings, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. The first thing I want to talk about is how they're changing the chords once in a while in the solo. And in the theme, so in the melody, when Jim Hall is playing that, they're not really changing anything. That's just the basic Autumn Leaves changes that we all know and play. So Autumn Leaves in G minor like this. And the only thing that maybe deserves to mention here is that in the second half you have Ron Carter comping with a dotted quarter note pattern. So he's playing this pattern that's actually 3/4 on top of the 4/4 meter for the first part of the second half. So you get this sort of pedal point that... And of course that's a 3/4 rhythm, so that is then later returned to just playing in normal 4/4. For the rest, they're not really doing anything in the theme. Once the first solo starts, so then the first chorus of Jim Hall, then we get one reharmonization that is very distinct, and also a very cool reharmonization to check out that you can use in other places as well. At the end of the first half and at the end of the second half, then the tonic chord, so the G minor 6, is changed into a D flat 7 sharp 11 chord, like this. And the idea here is that, especially in the second half at the end of the tune, of course this makes the melody, the melody is the root at that point, and it makes the melody the sharp 11 in the chord, so that's a nice effect. The other thing that's really cool about this is that when you're at the end of the form, then you need to go back to a C minor chord, because C minor is the first chord in the song, and then you have this tritone dominant. Another thing that you'll hear Jim Hall do really often in this solo is that he's changing the 2 chord in the minor cadences. So the minor cadence that we have is A half diminished, D7 to G minor 6. And what happens here is that Jim Hall will very often turn the A half diminished into an E flat 7. That happens especially sort of in the final cadence of the pieces, so that would be in the end of the first and in the end of the second half, but he does do it in several places throughout the solo, and it seems something that he just throws in there once in a while. This first example is a great example of how Jim Hall will work with really simple small motifs and use those and move them around and turn them into sequences. Because really what's happening here is that he's using G melodic minor on the tonic chord, so on the G minor 6 chord, really coming out on the major 6, so you can really hear that it's the melodic minor sound. And then he has this small scale melody, which is really just encircling the next note in the scale. So, and then at the end of the phrase he turns it into a G7, because we go back to the C minor afterwards. So he just emphasizes, instead of the B flat, he emphasizes the B. So we can really hear now it's a G7 chord, adding this diminished arpeggio to take us back to the C minor chord. What really makes this line interesting, I think, is the rhythm that's being used. So the first note is a quarter note, and then it's followed by 2 16th notes, so then going to the next quarter note. And this means that we have these groups of 3 8 notes that are moving across the meter. And of course that doesn't fit in the bar, so it moves around and creates a nice shifting effect on top of the 4/4 meter. And that's something that he uses really well here, and he actually uses this quite a lot in different ways throughout the solo also. And of course this is something that you can also try to introduce into your own playing. especially if you're using sort of this really simple scale-like motif, because that's easy to work with. You could maybe turn this into something like a 2-5-1 line. That could be something like this. Jim Hall follows up the previous polyrhythmic idea with another 3-note motif that he's moving around. This time it's not in 16th notes. The subdivision is now 8-note triplets, and the melody, the first statement, is really just this walk up to the third of the chord, so the E flat, so B flat, D, and up to E flat. Then targeting the third of the next chord, so the A. He does that with first the root and then a leading note and then the third, and then moves into this fragment that's from the 9th up to the 5th, and then we get sort of a resolution to the B flat major 7, sort of ending here on the 5th of the B flat major, and then targeting the 3rd, targeting the 7th, and then just moving that up, now targeting the 7th of the E flat major, and then up to the 3rd of the E flat major. And the rhythm here is not exactly triplets in any kind of grouping. He's really just working with this motif and making an interesting line with it, and not sticking to some sort of preset pattern of 8-note groupings, even though it is really close to playing the triplets in groups of 4, but it isn't exactly. The main reason that I can keep on publishing videos every week is that I have a community of people over on Patreon that are supporting my channel. I'm very grateful for that, and if you want to join us over on Patreon and help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. If you join us over there, I can also give you something in return for your support. This third example is using a variation of the rhythm that he's also using in the first example that I went over. So we have a group of 3 8 notes, but now the rhythm is turned around, so he's starting with the 16th note, so, and then ending with a quarter note. And then he's repeating this phrase. He's playing it 3 times for the first chord, then twice for the second chord, and then 3 times for the third chord, just to get it to flow across the 4/4 meter here, because of course 3 8-note groupings don't really fit in the 4/4 meter. What is worth mentioning about this is definitely that he's changing the harmony here. So the first thing that we hear here with, which is, it's really on an A half diminished, but what it's sort of implying is, well, it can be interpreted as being 2 different things. It's just a set of major thirds next to each other. So we first have F and A, then D flat and F, and then E flat and G. So it is kind of spelling out some sort of E flat 7 sharp 11 with these notes, and you could hear that as being part of the whole tone scale, so that kind of sound. And you can also hear it as being part of the melodic minor scale, because we have these 3 major thirds next to each other in that scale as well. And I guess it depends on how you hear it really. And in the context, I actually start to hear it more as being the melodic minor sound than the whole tone sound. But at the same time, my first reaction to it was that it was whole tone that he was using. The way this is applied to the form, we then kind of have an E flat 7 chord on the first chord. The next chord is a D7 chord, which is also what is originally there, but normally you would have a D7 that's resolving to a minor chord, so you would expect some sort of D7 flat 9, flat 13, but now we have a D7 with a 9 and a sharp 11. And then moving that down to the reharmonization of the G minor. So normally this would be a G minor 6 chord, but now it's turned into this, well, basically it's a D flat 7 sharp 11 chord. So, which is of course similar to what they've already been doing in the beginning of the solo. developing your skills and abilities, both when it comes to strong rhythms and also strong melodies, is of course something that's hugely important. And if you want to check out another video where I'm going over some rhythmical ideas that are more eighth note based and also inspired by Jim Hall, then check out this video. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar and it's the first time you see one of my videos, then subscribe to my channel. These are the kind of videos that I publish every week. And of course, if you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. That's about it for this week. Thank you for watching, and until next week.